I'm Ross Trachtenberg with Figure It Out Baseball, and I'm an assistant coach at Westchester University in Pennsylvania. I wanted to share some insight with you about how to plan for your next practice. Before you start writing down what you're going to do that day and establishing your goals, I think it's important to know your logistics. Just start with what's the temperature. If it's going to be a 95-degree day, that's not a great day to work on a ton of running type of activities. On the flip side, if you've got a 40-degree day that's cold, that's probably a good day to get a lot of base running in. So consider that factor along with how much time you have. Do you have a limit of just an hour on a field, or is your time limit pretty open? How many players are you going to have? Are you going to have players missing practice for any particular reason? And what type of assistance do you have from other coaches? If you've got 5 assistant coaches with you, that's very different than if you're running your practice by yourself. And one last area that I think it's important to recognize is what equipment you have. So you want to make sure you know what's essentially going to be there when you get to the field. Do you have protective screens? Do you have to move hitting turtles or things of that nature? Are there areas of the field that you might not be able to use because they're underwater? Or there's other obstructions on the field. So things like that, it's again important to just recognize those things as you start to build your plan. It's really important to write down your plan, be very detailed with it, and share that information with your assistant coaches and with the team. Simply posting it is a great start. That avoids the players asking, when are we hitting? Am I going to get a chance to pitch today? So as detailed as you can be in terms of who's batting in which group, for which team, when guys are pitching, things of that nature. So again, as detailed as you can be, and knowing who's going to be there for practice and who might be coming late or leaving early, keeping that in mind as you're putting together the plan is important. The next thing I think is important to think about is, what is your goal or goals? So an early season practice might be more of an evaluation practice for you as a coach. You want to get to know what you have, what skills are there, what positions are you strong at, and where do you need more depth or more instruction at. I think you might schedule those types of practices with the idea that they're going to essentially play live as much as you can. Later, you might determine we need to focus as a team on defense. So if you have 2 hours of practice, you might spend a full hour on team defense. So again, develop the focus of your practice, again, based on the time of year and what you think is most important at that time. I love to see competition during practice. I think that gets players excited. They're competing during games, so anything you can bring into a practice setting that makes it feel game-like, I think is a great thing to do, and the players enjoy it. And if you can level the playing field so that your least experienced, weakest player can still compete to win in a practice setting, that's terrific. So for instance, a ground ball challenge where you're just hitting ground balls one after another to your players and giving points, for instance, for consecutive ground balls fielded, that doesn't need to be the best player automatically wins type of situation. Leveling the playing field in terms of matchups of who's pitching to who types of situations. Again, that can level the playing field. Doing a bunting competition, again, anybody can win that. It's not just the best player automatically is going to win. So that competition, I think, as best as you can bring that in, as much as you can make it game-like during practice, that's going to make it fun. The pace of your practice, you want to try and keep that moving very similar to a game and what you envision for your team. So if you want your team sprinting on and off the field, that's how it should look when they go from one drill to the next. You give appropriate time for their water break, and then within that minute you say, okay, everybody back to the field, and the guys should be used to having their gloves handy, having their helmets ready, and they can sprint to that next place. And again, that comes from the coach. So the coach that's organized, the coach that has clear expectations, the coach that remains focused during practice is going to have players that follow suit. As a coach, if you don't pay attention to time, if you're very unclear about who's supposed to be where, If you lose focus and are focused on things that are not going on in the baseball field, so you're on your phone or you're talking to other folks around the field and you're not engaged in your team, you're probably going to see your team behave the same way. So be an example and make sure your assistant coaches are examples too of how you want things to look on the ball field. The last point that I'd like to bring up in terms of planning a practice is give positive incentives for the players. So rather than saying losers run lots of sprints or things of that nature, bring in positives. So the player that has the most success gets to bat first when we get to that portion of practice. This player gets released first for their water break, whoever runs the fastest around the bases. Again, keep it very simple. You don't need to have any type of major reward system here, but just some type of advantage, some type of incentive to do a great job rather than the fear of, I did poorly, I'm going to have to do push-ups or sit-ups. Again, that's just my philosophy and what I think can try and get the best out of your players, the best energy and the best focus for them. These are just some ideas to put to use when you start to plan for your practices. And again, I think recognizing your logistics, really, where you're going to hold this, what the weather is going to be like, what your equipment needs, and then also who your personnel, how many players, who's going to be there, and then obviously who's going to be there to help you. I think take all those things into account before you get to the planning stage for your practice. I hope this can be of help for you, and I look forward to sharing more information with you in the future. Again, I'm Ross Trachtenberg with Figured Out Baseball.